God bless each of you. Welcome to the Dwelling Place. This is Evangelist Doris J. Roberson. I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We are indeed happy to welcome you back to our program on tonight. And for our first-time viewers, again, welcome. You are in the right place. We are here to serve you, and my tagline is that this is where you meet wisdom, where men and women meet wisdom and resources are shared. Yes, we bring experts in various fields to share with you many different aspects of wisdom. And this year we're focusing on wisdom in every area of our life, not only in our spiritual life, our physical health. We're talking about financial health. We're going to be talking about every aspect, marriage as well as single life, and bringing the experts in the field to talk about these various areas. So I want to welcome you and ask that you would at this time share and tag that others can join this conversation, this dialogue, as well as this informative presentation that our guests will be bringing to us on tonight. I'm indeed happy to welcome back Danielle Byrd Thompson, who was with us last year. I tell you, I just recently, Danielle, listened to portions of last year and said, what an outstanding presentation. My hats is off to you. This young lady comes to us with expert background. She is a graduate of Howard University located in Washington, D.C. She has an MBA and in finance was her concentration. If I've got that wrong, please correct me. But she also received her bachelor's degree from Howard University. She is an outstanding presenter. I like to say that last year she was noted for being the second female, African American female, to enter the Equitable Financial Hall of Fame. And so I'm here tonight to welcome her and turn our platform over to her. And tonight you will have the opportunity to ask questions, put questions in the chat. We are here to meet your needs. Our title is What You Need to Know About Financial Planning and Navigating Transition. All of us have unexpected situations to occur in our life, and she's here to help us with our financial health. And so tonight, if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and we will come back and address those questions throughout our session on tonight. At this time, I'm going to ask Danielle to welcome, and I'm going to remove myself from the platform and be monitoring our questions and asking you later, presenting your questions to our presenter on tonight. So at this time, Danielle, would you please greet our guests, and you can kind of lay the foundation, tell them what they can expect on tonight.
Hello. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Evangelist. As stated, I am Danielle Byrd Thompson, a partner in TPS Financial. I've got a background in finance, but I'm so happy to be here with you guys tonight. I have for almost 20 years been working exclusively with clients and helping people build, create, and what I call retain wealth. And then the last part of that is we do a lot of legacy planning, right? So those who are concerned about future generations, how do we pass that forward? So that is my background. But I think it is just such a poignant time for us to be having these conversations and these discussions. As the evangelist mentioned, I am based out of Washington, D.C. And here in D.C. right now, we are seeing an unprecedented time of job loss, as that is all across the country, but we definitely are feeling it here, probably a little bit more. So these conversations are so important. And I know that your time is valuable, my time is valuable. And so really, as we begin to start this conversation, I want to make sure that everyone knows that we are here. The evangelist is here. I'm here as a resource to help address people's needs. So obviously, I'm going to go through a lot of things this evening. But if there are questions, if there are concerns, please put them in the chat. This is really a safe space to kind of put that stuff out there and get it addressed, right? There's no question that is too simple. There's no question that is too high level for us to kind of start to peel back and understand the layers. So again, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing the stream link with folks. And we really want to make sure that your questions and your concerns are addressed. Okay, so we will do that. We will pause throughout the presentation. The evangelist will come back and address those questions and concerns. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to chat with you all. This is one of my favorite subjects, right? Financial health. And we find sometimes in our communities that these subjects are not often discussed. So we want to change that. We want to change that narrative. So thank you again to the evangelist for having me here and having me on. So I'm sure that folks have questions and concerns, but I want to start with really some foundational tools that really need to be in your toolkit. It's an analogy that I use often. What tools do we need to have? We want you to have a strong financial well-being. So when we start to do that, right, there's the first one, which is super simple, but it so often gets overlooked. It is a budget, right? A budget is a couple of things. It's your income and your expenses. Most times people just think it's their expenses, but let's start with the income. I say that because I sit down with people all the time and I'll start with, what is your annual salary? And so many people pause. Most people do. It is shocking to say that most people don't know their annual salary. They may know what gets deposited biweekly or, every month or whatever your payroll system is, but folks really don't know their annual income most of the time. That's what I've seen in my practice. So the first step is understanding your income, right? And so starting there, that allows us to understand, okay, if my salary is X and I get this amount every 2 weeks, it allows us to start doing some things like a good intake of, one, am I being taxed appropriately, right? Based on what my salary is. I'm always a fan of you double checking. You don't defer to anyone at payroll. It's important for you to just understand some of these things at a basic level, right? So are things adding up appropriately? Do I have 3 dependents? Do I have no dependents? Do I have additional sources of income? Understanding, what is my income? Where is my tax liability, right? Because that's the kind of the first thing. And so from there, right, so you know your salary, you know what's coming in on your payroll frequency, if it's bi-weekly, bi-monthly, monthly, weekly, whatever that looks like. So understanding that landscape first and foremost. Second thing there is understanding what are your expenses, right? And it's good to have a ballpark, but like really understanding, what is my rent? What is my mortgage? What type of insurances do I have? What do I spend on food? What am I spending on utilities? All of those things. And we know some of those costs are variable, which means they change every month. But we should have a ballpark for where those numbers fall, right? And so the first thing you can see very quickly is, does your expenses exceed your income? And if they do, we got a problem, right? We got to kind of pull back and correct some things because that should not happen. But quite frequently it does, right? Because we are operating in the blind, right? We are in a society where probably everyone is getting direct deposit. Everyone is swiping a card a lot of times versus using cash. A lot of things might be on auto bill pay. And so it is very easy with, so many folks having access to credit. Even if you don't have access to credit, right? We all know if we're using a debit card and we don't have enough money, the card will still go through. we will get charged. We will get, fees for that. So understanding that this is no longer so much a cash and carry society. It is lines of credit. It's easy to go over. It's easy to live above your income. And so step one, understanding what my income is annually and on my payroll frequency. And then what are my expenses? So mapping those type of things out. Second thing is having some access to financial institutions. Now, for some people, this is going to seem super basic in the sense of you need to have a bank account. You need to have a savings account. You need to have a checking account at minimum. Those are the first two things that you need to have. And where this may seem super basic to some folks, what I found is the younger generation, not millennials, but the one under that, I can't think of the name right now. A lot of those generation, they don't believe in bank accounts. They use cards that are preloaded and have payroll checks and things like that deposit on them. And so although those are not horrible, we see more predatory practices as it relates to those. So having a relationship with a bank, right? Whoever that is. And though there are numerous reasons for that, but the first is obviously in a healthy, normal way to be able to balance your day-to-day expenses. So that's number two. Third thing that we really want to get into is being a good steward of your finances. What does that mean? That means we should not be spending everything that comes in. We should be saving. Okay? So now we're aware of our income, we're aware of our expenses. We've created a budget and we're using a bank. From that budget, we should be able to see where we have some room and where we don't have room. As we go through our budget, we can start to prioritize, right? What are things that I can keep that I need? And a lot of times, obviously, those are things like our expenses for living, like our utilities, like our housing costs, all of those type of things. And so, but there probably are things that we can kind of reassess in terms of what we're spending on. Are we dining out a lot? Are we door dashing? Are we Uber eating? Are we taking Ubers when we could be driving? All of these other things. So as you start to kind of go through your budget and understand, what is a need, what is a want, and then maybe we've got some super luxury stuff. Now, if you have all those things and you still have disposable income at the end of the month, then wonderful. You're doing a good job with understanding your budget. If you don't, right, it's time to reevaluate. So we understand our budget. We understand what our income and expenses look like. And from that, what are we saving, right? You should be saving 20 to 25% of your income. And I know that might sound like a lot to people, but to me, it sounds good. It means you get to keep 80% of your income, right? You get to keep 75% of your income to spend and to live off today. But you need to create a plan to be saving anywhere between 20 to 25% of your income. Where should that savings go? What is the goal for savings? When can I turn it off? When do I have to do 25%? These are questions that I get all the time. For the rest of my life, how long? That seems like a lot of money to be putting away. These are questions that I get all the time. And so when we're talking about a pathway to financial health, when we are saving, there are some things that we are trying to safeguard against. And the most significant one for folks who are employed and working, I'm not talking about those who are retired, but for folks who are actively in the workforce, is unemployment. Unemployment can be detrimental if you have no savings. We know that the national savings rate in America is 3%. That means the majority of folks are not saving. Only 3% are. That's really jaw-dropping when you think about it. And as you start to think about what should I be saving, am I saving appropriately? I always ask people to think about what would happen if there was some type of mix up with your employer and you missed your next payroll check and the one after that. You've missed 1 month of pay. How would that impact you? We should all have 6 to 8 months of monthly expenses in a savings account. So what does that mean, right? That we've created a budget. We know what our expenses are at this point as we're starting to build out our pathway to financial health. So let's say our monthly expenses are $5,000 a month, right? 6 months worth of expenses means you need to have at least $30,000 on hand, that in the event that something were to happen to you, you were to lose your job, or you were to be hit by a bus crossing the street, or something odd were to happen and throw off your income, that we know you have at least 6 months of savings sitting in the bank. Now, and when I say sitting in the bank, this is kind of what I mean. If we're using the example of $30,000, right? I'd like you to have 2 months of that, right? If we're saying our monthly expenses are $5,000 a month, 10,000 of that needs to be in a savings account at your bank. So that if something happens, you can walk up to the ATM, you can walk up to any teller and get $2,000, $3,000, whatever, cold hard cash out in the event that you need that. Savings accounts at banks and financial institutions really are not going to pay you a bunch to have that money there, but what it is paying you is the peace of mind to have access to your asset. So, peace of mind to have access to your asset, and you need about 2 months worth. Remember, we need about 6 to 8 months worth of savings. So where do we put, if we put 2 months worth, we've hit our goal, say, Danielle, I've got my six months. I feel like that's enough. If I were to become unemployed, worst case scenario, I think 6 months would get me through. Okay. I put my 10,000 in my savings account with whomever. Where do I put the balance? What should I do with that $20,000? Well, $20,000 is a significant asset. And we don't want that just sitting in a bank, not really building and creating a resource for you, but we need it liquid. We don't need it to be in the market. We don't need it to be caught up in the fluctuations of how the stock market is performing. That additional balance, that additional 4 to 6 months or so, or $20,000, whatever, number we want to use, should be in a high yield savings account. It should be in a high yield savings account because that is a financial instrument, another financial institution that is going to make some money for you. It is not just giving you peace of mind, right, to have access to your asset, but typically now a lot of the higher paying financial institutions that do the high yield savings market, most of them are online. There's some that are brick and mortar. And so typically when you put your money into a high yield savings, you get paid a higher rate of interest. Now there typically is little to no risk, right? We're not taking any risk. We're not investing in anything, but it's just giving you a higher guaranteed rate. With most high yield accounts, typically the access is not as quick as it would be with your traditional savings account with your financial institution. That is typically looks like a 3 to 4 to 5 day window, right? When you're transferring those funds back to your bank. Now, we need to know you can get them in 3 to 5 business days is typically, fine for most people, knowing that we've got that 2 months in front of us in our savings account. So that is the number, right? 6 months. Now, this conversation and this can really kind of be intimidating to folks because people can say, Danielle, I don't have 6 months. Danielle, I don't have 60 days worth of money in a savings account. I don't have a high yield account. I've never opened it. That's okay, right? Knowledge is power. This is step one. So now everyone who's here, everyone who's listening knows it should be 6 to 8 months. 2 months of that should be in your savings account. You don't have to check everything off the list before you move on to the next things that we're going to talk about. Step is, let's build out a plan, right? So you might be gainfully employed, right? How can you currently start pushing an additional $100, $200, $300 a check a month over into a savings account to begin to build towards and work towards that goal, right? That's it. And so really, once you hit that number of 6 to 8 months worth of savings in a savings and high yield account, that's it. We're done there, right? We want to start using your money in a different way. Now, that doesn't mean we're not saving 20, 25%. That means we have checked that off the list. We don't need any more money sitting in cash at that point, okay? And this is, again, just based on your monthly expenses. If you are a property owner, if you are a landlord, if you are someone who has other things going on, that number may need to be a little bit higher, right? And so again, don't let the dollar figure intimidate you. We just have to start building out a plan to getting there. That's what's important, right? Because if something were to happen and you don't have 6 months, but you have 3 or you have 2, that can be a big help, okay? So as we start to go through, those are kind of the immediate first tools that you need to have in your toolbox, right? When we are talking about what you should be doing for a healthy pathway to financial health. The next thing is a really significant topic, and I'm sure most people know where I'm going to go next. That is retirement. There's so many things going on right now in the media with retirement, with Social Security, that really is a big talking point. And I know that it seems generationally, a lot of baby boomers are really kind of aware of what's going on in the news as it surrounds Social Security. But what I'm finding is Gen X, millennials, younger, they're not really versed, and they need to be, because this is something that affects every generation in this country, not just those who are currently in or soon to be facing retirement. So let's start to kind of peel the layers back, right? Retirement, we've got to have some assets and tools in the toolbox to meet that need. Some of the most alarming things that are going on as it relates to retirement, and I like to give everybody a full picture so that they are aware. Social Security, numbers wise, runs out in 2034. That is 9 years away. We have gone through several recent political cycles, and this is not as hot topic as I feel that it should be. But in 9 years, if you go on Social Security ss.gov right now, you will see that it says anybody receiving a Social Security benefit in 2034 will get a 20% reduction to their Social Security. You tell me. If you're working somewhere and your employer says, I'm going to cut your salary by 20%, how would that impact you? Are you prepared for that? And then this current administration is talking about getting rid of Social Security as a whole, when many Americans live off of Social Security. So I just want to set that context so everyone knows how important it is to have your own personal individual assets for retirement in your name that you are saving and contributing to. What do those assets look like? What are the names of their accounts? There are tons of different retirement accounts. I'm going to touch on some of the most significant ones, but there may be accounts that I miss or that I don't say, but most significantly is a 401k. If you work for a for-profit company, you will have a 401k. Second up would be a 403b or a tax shelter. If you work in the nonprofit space, you will always have that. Most public school districts, college, universities have that. If you work for a local municipality, you will have something called a deferred compensation 457 plan. If you work for the federal government, you will have something called a TSP. Those are the four most well-known employer-based plans. You have access to those plans based on who your employer is, right? So if you have one of the four, if you are self-employed, you have the ability to create a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, which really anyone can create. But then if you are solely self-employed, you have something called a SEP IRA that you can create. There are also employer-based plans for smaller, more startup companies that are called simple IRAs. And so there's kind of like an IRA component to this. There are different types of IRAs. And then there is plans that begin with the number 4, which are typically employer-based accounts, the most popular one being a 401k. Let me say this. Every single person should be contributing at least 10% of their income into their retirement plan through their employer or whether it be self-employed, right? Very simple. That means if you make $80,000 a year, $8,000 a year at minimum should be flowing into your retirement account. Don't think about it. We don't have the resources not to do it at this point. That is absolutely what should be happening. Oh, people will say, Danielle, well, my employer matches. They put 7% in, so I just put in 3. Doesn't matter. I don't care if the employer puts in 20%. You should be contributing at least 10% of your income, if not more, into your retirement account if you are someone who wants to retire. If you want to work up until the day that you pass away, and that is your goal, and there are people who do want to do that, then that's a different story. But if you would like to retire, at least 10%. I tell people it's just like tithing. And the real funny thing about 10% that's really phenomenal is that if you do it from your first day, that first job at 21, 22, and you do that consistently until you retire, be it at 65, 67, 70, you can stay at 10% that whole time. That is the beauty. You never have to increase if you can consistently do that through your entire career. The issue is most people don't. Most people don't start. It's very difficult for 20-year-olds to understand and commit to saving for retirement on any level, right? Most people try to start to get serious in their mid to late 30s, right? And at that point, we have missed well over a decade of savings. So start young, start early, and start appropriately if you would like to save. Recommendation is that, again, 10% is the minimum thought, but I always tell my clients 10 to 15%, generally speaking, is the range. You can also max fund your retirement account. What does that mean? Every year, every other year, the IRS changes the limits on how much you can contribute to a retirement account. But that number this year is around about 23,000 or 23,500. And then if you're over 50, IRS has a regulation that is called a catch-up provision, which allows you to put even more money in for retirement. So what I don't want is for folks to wait until they are 10, 15 years out to start taking retirement savings seriously, because at that point, in all honesty, it is almost impossible to catch up. I mean, it's impossible to save appropriately in the confines of like a 10 to 15 year window. Realistically, we've got to push that retirement age out, and we have to make some concessions in other places. So if you don't know what you have through your employer, you need to know. Do you have a 401k? Do you have a TSP? You have a 457, 403B. Then what are you saving, right? 10%. I charge everyone who doesn't know or is not doing 10% to go in tomorrow to their employer plan, log in, and bump that contribution up and deal with the aftermath, move other things around. Extremely, extremely important. The other thing that I will say there is that you also, and again, not to leave my self-employed folks out, because we so often do that when we talk about 401ks and employer-based plans. If you are self-employed, if you are starting your own business, you can create a SEP IRA with any financial institution, an investment broker dealer, or even your bank. Right? And you can still save 10% of your income. You can start to build that out into your plan of things that you have. So that's the next step of this, is having a retirement instrument. Within that instrument, so I'll share with you a story that was actually quite sad. A woman had read an article about how important it was to have a Roth IRA. And she established this Roth IRA, and every year she put in the max. And I think when she went to retire, checked the account, she wasn't checking the account, just having contributions. 20 years later, all that was in the account was her contributions, because there was a missing piece. Does anyone want to put in the chat what they think the missing piece was? Someone was told to establish an IRA, a Roth IRA. She went in to set up a Roth IRA, did it all online. Every year, she was putting in the max, just set it and forget it, had a draft, and she never thought anything else about it. But when she checked that account 20 years later, what was in that account was only the contributions. Anybody know? Any thoughts? Just pause for a moment. Why would only contributions be in the account?
No one has.
I see the evangelist coming back. So maybe we have some folks who put some things in the chat.
No, no one responded to, no one's taking a guess at your question. I don't know if you were looking.
I see.
But wow. I'm trying to think, what did she do wrong?
Any thoughts?
Gosh.
No? Okay, I will share. This is a big one. She never invested the account. So it is important for us to have this retirement asset, be it a Roth IRA, traditional IRA, anything through your employer that begins with the number 4, right? We should be taking money out of our payroll checks. We should be having that draft from our bank accounts and go into the account. But the missing piece of this is you have to make a decision on the investment strategy of those accounts. This is what makes retirement assets different and takes it to that next level versus when we talked about our banks, our checking, our savings, our high yield savings. We have those things. But when we have retirement accounts, there's an extra layer of due diligence that we really have to make sure that we talk about and make sure folks know, is that we should be investing those assets. There is an additional step once those accounts are established. It is not just set it and forget it.
She did not do that.
She did not. She did not.
Okay.
So when it comes to these type of accounts, it's really important, one, that you probably are working with someone at your workplace or through the financial institution that you're working with, to understand that once you have those accounts established and you're beginning to fund them, we've got to go in and make investment decisions. Are you investing in mutual funds? Are you buying stocks? Are you buying bonds? And let me be very clear, you don't have to do any of those things. You can also invest in fixed instruments, which are more guaranteed and provide stability, but something has to be done. So this is what makes that type of asset different.
Danielle, I have a question then.
Sure.
So if she wasn't knowledgeable of what to invest in, where was, I mean, she obviously thinking she was doing the right thing, established a Roth account, putting contributions there, but she did not, earmark it for certain investment. So it wasn't really gaining any potential.
It was sitting in cash. It would have been the same if she just put it in a checking account. Just it was within a retirement.
Right. Wow. That is very disturbing.
Yes.
So typically, does that happen though? Because, well, I guess it could happen, but if you have an advisor, like through most of your employers, they may ask you, or if you, so there was no advisor through her company or?
Well, she set up an individual account.
Individual.
It doesn't seem like she was working with an advisor.
I see.
She just was told, hey, you should have a Roth. And she set up the Roth and she didn't invest it. So I really want people to understand that it is important to have dialogues with folks, especially if you're not super familiar, well versed with some of these type of accounts. They are different from your traditional financial instruments like a checking, savings, high yield savings account. There are differences between them. Now, a lot of employers have done a very good job with automatic enrollment and making suggestions when you go through your online portal. If you're this age, you should be invested in this manner. Check this box if you want to proceed and move forward. But that does not always happen. So I just want to highlight that because someone thinking they're doing the right thing for 20 years, and they were, but there was a real important critical step that was missed, and that was actually investing the assets, okay?
Wow, okay.
So just wanted to kind of share that piece. So when it comes to investing and what should you do, what kind of decisions should you make with your retirement account, there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind, right? The first is your time horizon. How long do you have? Are you 25? Are you 35? Are you 45? Are you 55? Right? All of those present many different scenarios. You have 30 years to go, 15, 20, all of those things. And that's a big part, really, of how much risk you have the ability to even take, right? If you've got 5 years to retirement versus you've got 30 years, we're talking about two different ends of the spectrum, right? And so the other part of that is how comfortable are you investing in the market? And a lot of times folks may not be comfortable. They might be a little bit ignorant about the market, which is fine. They may have used traditional financial instruments that we would find in a bank. And that's really their level of comfort. So it's important to kind of have these dialogues and these conversations with financial advisors, investment advisors, just to understand your resources through your employer. How knowledgeable are the folks there who can kind of help and advise you? Market is cyclical. It goes up and down. Don't be afraid of the market. It is something that the most wealthiest of folks in this country use as a tool and a resource, and it's just about using it the right way. What you want to do is to grow your assets to sustain you, whether you retire at 65 and live to 75, or whether you retire at 65 and live to 105. What we have to understand is that we need to be, one, saving appropriately for that, but then two, coming up with an investment strategy around that one, makes sure we're comfortable from a risk perspective, but also understands that we do have to grow the assets. The goal is to leave them so that you have them there to use as a resource. what we find nowadays is many people are spending just as long of time in the workforce as they are in retirement. If there are folks who are on the stream who know any people over 90, just go ahead and drop 90 in the chat. We'll kind of get a little gauge there. But, if you've had a cousin, aunt, a mother, a father to live well into their 90s, we are seeing that, right? And so if you're retiring at 60 or 65, we're talking about another 25 to 30 years in retirement. So really what is important is that, we have the financial resources to spread that amount of time. I can think of my great grandmother. I can think of I have one great grandmother who lived to 103. Her sister lived to 105. Her older sister outlived her. So, another great grandmother who lived well into their late 90s, and grandparents, one grandmother who's in her 90s and another one who lived until her early 90s. So we are seeing that people are living longer. And we're also seeing that they need the financial resources to do that. Nobody wants their money to run out at 87 years old, and they're still doing well, right? So the real pathway here is knowing that you should be saving for retirement. You should be doing that at least the level of 10%. You should be taking advantage of any resources that your employer gives you surrounding retirement, understanding what the match is. If there's no match, what that means. What is the vesting schedule? A vesting schedule means how long do you have to be there to get the match, right? If they're throwing in another 3, 4, 5%, vesting means, but if you leave next year, you don't get it. You've got to be here 3 years. You've got to be here 5 years. So be an informed employee about your benefits and let that lead you in your decision making.
So Danielle, you've done a phenomenal job. I don't see any questions. However, as I'm thinking about just in general, many of our young people now are not getting married until they're in their, I would say, later 20s and early 30s. So when I hear you say, that first check or that first really professional job or that job that you get, and now you're thinking about marriage or getting it, or maybe married, but some would say having that type of saving is unheard of in our community. When I say our community, I'm talking about the just in the African American or community, because there's so many individuals that have come out of single family homes or have gone to college and have used financial aid and loans and things. What would you say to that population? They may want to, and they may say, you know what, I did not have that education or that role model growing up. So I appreciate this information, but that's not my portfolio in terms of where I'm at. And maybe you've had some people that have come to you and say, I want to do better. But based on what you're saying, that had never happened. I could imagine individuals saying, I'll never get there. You're talking about $12,000 to be saved and having $2,000 in my savings account. Talk to that population. Talk to those individuals tonight. What encouragement can you tell them, and what would be your strategy and advice?
Absolutely, Evangelist. That's really a great question. And so we want to focus on that generation and the younger generation. For folks who are hearing some of these numbers, and they're big numbers, and they can be startling to folks. And sometimes we know that financial stuff can also impact mental health and can be depressing because, oh
Yes,
man,
yes.
she's here saying I need $20,000 in this account, and I'm just glad, my last check cleared and all of those type of things. So it takes that, and I understand that is it. But let me speak to that generation specifically. I will ask you, who will chart a new course for your family? Who will
That's good.
change and make some generational shifts? It is not the expectation, right? That I need you to have $20,000 saved up tomorrow. I need you to be working towards the goal. And if working means putting an additional $20 away every 2 weeks, that is better than where you were before. We are
That's really good.
working towards the goal. You know what it is. You know it should be 6 months. You know you don't have 6 months. That's okay. I also said 3% is the national savings rate in this country. So we're not doing it, and the others are not doing it either, but it needs to be done. We know we are disproportionately impacted by things like job loss, unemployment, financial predatory lenders, and all of those things. So we need a pathway to financial health so that we don't have to fall victim to those things. So while you are working, while you do have employment, let's start to build out a plan to get there. I'm also going to speak to my 20-somethings who are single and don't have kids and have entire control over their day.
All right.
You should be working somewhere else. You should have a second job. I don't care if you're an attorney. I don't care if you are a bus driver. You need a second source of income. One, you have the time. You have the time and the availability, right? And as you go through your life, if you do get married and have children, your time is no longer your time, okay? So I want you to understand that live with that mentality of a college student. If you graduated from college 2-3 years ago, you don't need a downtown condo apartment and all. No, you need to be living with a roommate or two, and you need to be working another job. That can be something like waiting tables. That can be something like Uber Eats or DoorDash or Ubering or Instacarting, right? I don't ever want anyone to think they are above doing any type of work. But if you like to work out, you can teach a workout class on Saturdays, Sundays, in the evenings, Monday through Friday. I want you to have an additional stream of income. And I guarantee you, if you do that, and then let's think about this. This is your second job, right? This is not the job that you got that meets your income and expenses from your budget. Everything from this second job is surplus. Everything from this second job can be saved.
Good recommendation.
Okay. And you would see how quickly, and this is not something that, you've got to do for 3-4 years. Now you can, if you would like to, but if you did that and you banked that money, you would be surprised how quickly your money would grow in 6 months.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was a statement that one have put in. I think it was about the relationship with money. People needing to rethink their relationship with money. You want to talk to that or speak to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one thing that we see in our community a lot is when I get money, I'm going to get this. I'm going to buy this. I want to get a new outcome, how they're going to use their money. What I would like to challenge people to think about is how can you start using your money to make money for you? Let's not think about how we're going to spend it. but how we're going to retain it, and then how is it going to grow for us? How can you leverage your assets to create more assets?
What a great recommendation.
Yeah, we want to
So,
start thinking about things differently. If what you're doing, and this is what's happening, and these are conversations that are really being discussed at a very high level, right? But you don't have to be a multi-millionaire to have your assets make money for you. Let's be clear. We can bring that down to an everyday level, right? How can we do those things? Not just what can we invest in? Can we buy, invest in the market? Can we create businesses? Can we leverage opportunities, right? What can we do? I know there was someone very early in the days of one of my clients, early in the days of Uber, who, when Uber first came out, he had a wonderful idea, and he leveraged his assets, right? He's used his payroll income, and he bought about 3 vehicles, some were leased or whatever, and he started renting those out to people to use to do Uber. So again,
wow.
leveraging assets to create other assets. There's no wrong way to do it, right? But let's start thinking about that versus, ooh, I can't wait to go get this new purse. Ooh, I can't wait to get this new car. How can we make that money work in a different way?
That is excellent. Excellent advice. I hope someone put that in the chat in terms of what you mentioned. That is thinking differently and leveraging, not what can your money do for you, and not, continue to feed into how I want to spend the next dollar. That is great.
Absolutely.
There is a comment. What is your feeling about retirees working part-time?
I love it. I think it's a wonderful thing. And it's been studied, and it really needs to happen more. So, first and foremost, right, to address this in a full scope, because it's a really great question. So, thanks for who asked that in the chat. First and foremost, we know folks are living longer. When Social Security was created, by FDR, the average age that people lived on Social Security before they passed away was 7 years, right? So huge shift now, right? Folks on average, I think, are living 21 years into retirement versus 7 years. So you can see when I said there is a strain on the Social Security system because it hasn't been updated since it was created. So people are living much, much longer, right? We want you to have some additional financial resources. So let's say you retire at 65. If you can do something 2 or 3 days a week that brings some additional financial assets into the household, what it also does is it delays you having to access these retirement accounts. Now these retirement accounts are continuing to grow, and that interest is just compounding. And for most people, let's use the example of 65. When you retire at 65, you have more in your retirement account than you probably ever had. So what that means is that interest is compounding at a higher level. Even though you're no longer working and you're not making contributions, right? A 10% return on $100,000 is $10,000 a year. Maybe when you're just starting, you had $1,000 in there, 10% return, although great, right? That's $100. What's that? Now, if your money is just kind of building in the background for 10 more years into retirement, it's phenomenal. Second piece of that is that we know it has been proven with all type of statistics and health resources is that we are now in a phase where Alzheimer's and dementia are rampant. And we know what keeps a brain healthy is that continual engagement, right? So if you are now doing that well into your 70s, it's really, really helpful all the way around, from your physical and mental health, but your financial health as well. Oh, I think, did I freeze?
Very good.
So just some thoughts there. And again, I'm not asking people to continue to, work from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday at 75. That's not at all what I'm saying. But if you found something that is flexible, that gives you the ability to do something on your own schedule, absolutely wonderful.
Beautiful. I think we're about reaching the hour point, but this conversation is so good. Would you repeat again what you said about Social Security it is projected in 9 years that it will be reduced by 20%? Did I hear that correctly?
You did. So if you go on the Social Security website, which is ssa.gov, and most people should be familiar with that site because it's a great resource, right? But they don't always send the statements out to folks who are not nearing or in retirement. So if you want to know what your payments would look like and you're in your 40s or 50s, that is really your only tool. When you're on that site, it will tell you that everyone who is receiving Social Security in 2034 will receive a 20% pay cut to their current Social Security.
Wow. Repeat the website so somebody can put it in their chat. If someone would just type it in again. What was the website?
ssa.gov. I went ahead and put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Like Social Security Administration.gov.
Okay. Right. Okay. Awesome. And I just add another question that I have. You talk about having money in your savings, and but if it's just sitting there and making, I want to say 3.5 interest, your recommendation is to transfer that, leaving this emergency money there. But if you got a lump sum, then you should be looking at an
high yield savings. Absolutely. High yield savings for the majority. We definitely need just what you said, that emergency fund just at the bank. If something happens, your car goes out, you got to get your hands on $1,500 really quickly, you can go to your bank and do that. But we still want you to use those other 4 to 6 months. We don't want you taking risk and putting that in the market. We want you to leverage a high yield savings account, which is going to keep your money safe. It's not going to risk it, but it's also going to pay you a higher rate of interest to have your money sitting there.
So the high yield rates, would you look for that? Where would you look for it at?
Yes.
Would it be into your banks or a credit union or a different type of financial institution?
Yeah. Credit unions can be really good. Right now, I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years, there have been a big surgence of online high yield savings financial institutions, and they're all pretty strong and very reputable. I can't make any specific recommendations, but I would say online and start to research that. We find that the online institutions typically can pay higher because they've cut their expenses. They don't have brick and mortar institutions, so they tend to are very highly ranked from the institutions that rank those financial banks, but they certainly can pay a really competitive rate on the high yield savings accounts.
And so Danielle, can you help us to understand when this past or last week, we were hearing about people losing, millions, those that had, a significant lots of money, and even some that had, maybe in the thousands, losing money because of the market.
Absolutely.
Would that be a different type of investment opposed to, I'm just giving you, saying.
No, that's a great question. This has been all over the media lately, right? Yes. So the great thing to that high yield savings is it is totally risk averse. It is not related in any way, shape, or form to what is going on right now. Currently, the stock market, the U.S. stock market. So if you see anything about the Dow Jones, about the S&P 500, about the NASDAQ, all those are different indexes within the stock market. Stock market lost, I think, about $1 trillion last week. So very significant decline as it relates to a fear of what is coming out of the current administration surrounding tariffs that has really caused the U.S. stock market to perform very poorly last week especially, but over the last 3 weeks it's been consistently down. So what that means right now for everybody on this call is that if you do have retirement accounts that are invested in the market, you had some type of mutual fund, some type of stock, some type of even bond in your retirement portfolio. Now you probably are not going to like what you see when you log on to your account and see the account.
Okay. Yeah, right. I understand. Okay. So that's different from what you might have in a high yield account that might be fixed.
Absolutely.
Okay. All righty.
Absolutely.
I don't.
Uh-oh, I think.
Danielle, I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you for an amazing job, so knowledgeable, so helpful. Those that have just joined, I would encourage you to go back. I would encourage you to pass this information on to the younger generation. There was many recommendations that would be helpful to those that are in their 20s and 40s and still building their career. Excellent, outstanding. And then, of course, for retirees or those that are looking at retiring in the next few years. And let me just throw another question out because I just thought about
one more thing to add too.
Yeah, like so for those that are still in their 60s and they're working and toward so if they have not invested to the 10%, your recommendation would be even though they are approaching closer to the 65 retirement, you would encourage them to go back in and change their contributions.
Yep. Evangelist, that's a great question. I'm going to even challenge my folks who are in their 60s a little bit more. I would suggest that we look at putting in the max. The max is a big number, right? But this is the rationale that I give for that. First of all, we can try it. We can always dial it back if you can't. But let's try. One, we're closer to retirement than we've ever been. So we don't have the time horizon is that we don't have another 10, 15 years. The thing about retiring is once you retire, you can no longer make a contribution to a retirement account. So this is our last hurrah. Second thing is, although by putting in the max, it's going to reduce our taxable income significantly, it's going to drop our spending power. What it will also do is get your income more in line with what your retirement income is going to look like.
Okay, that's a good.
Kind of get adjusted and prepare for that transition.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That is so good. I will have to pass that recommendation on. That is so good. Well, phenomenal job. I want you all to know, I'm going to put her information back up on the screen. So in case you want to send her an email, you can feel free to do that. I'll let that run and we'll just have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for your word and for your teaching tonight on business and financial strategies and financial health. We just thank you for our listening audience. We thank you for our presenter who has just been so helpful. And we thank you, God, for everyone that will hear this message in the future. We pray, God, that they would have the motivation and the inspiration to take these recommendations to work on their own financial wellness. And we just give you praise, glory, and honor, and ask all these and other blessings in Jesus' name. We do pray. And again, Danielle, hats off. Thank you so much. And it's been a blessing to hear this information. And I want to encourage our audience that are here that on May 1st, we're not done yet. I want you to mark your calendars to come back to hear Janae Thornton. Many of you know her or have heard her. She's the CEO of her podcast, You Will Thank Me Later. And so she is awesome in the field of financial wellness. She's going to be talking how to get out of credit debt. That's her focus. She wants to help people to get out of financial, not financial debt, but financial debt, but she's going to zero in on credit card debt and also talking about financial legacy. So again, you're going to hear some of the recommendations that Danielle have talked about. Even last year, you focused on financial generational wealth. And so I would encourage you, if you want to hear her information from last year, go to the YouTube channel and put in Danielle Byrd Thompson. And certainly it's a phenomenon. I listened to it just recently, and boy, did I started to say, I need to do that. I heard it but I need to take action. So thank you again. I encourage you again to pass this information on to other listening audience. Thank you. We're going to end our broadcast at this time. Danielle, you can stay with me. Okay, we have ended 1 hour and almost 10 minutes, but thank you so very much. Let me just stop this. Phenomenal job you did. Your aunt had many wonderful comments to say to you. She said she loved you to pieces. So.
I love her too. That's so thoughtful.
You'll have to text her back, telling her thank you.
I will.
Well, we are still live. Oh, it's it. Oh my goodness, we are still. Let me.